How often have you heard someone say, "Don't mistake my kindness for weakness"? I've heard it quite a bit, and I think there's a lot of reasons for people saying that. I feel that certain characteristics and traits that many of us have are often confused with being weak, and the concept of weakness being seen even as a negative trait, when I feel in some instances it's actually a positive trait and even a strength. I know that sounds kind of contradictory and oxymoronic and ironic and all that sort of thing, but just hear me out here. Oh, before we fully get into it, let me give you some context about what you're seeing right here now. First of all, thanks for clicking on this video and giving it a shot. I appreciate it very much. I made a promise to myself that I would post every single day here on YouTube, partially as an experiment to track my progress as a content creator throughout this whole year, but also because I got a lot of stuff in my mind and I'd like to share it with anyone out there who's willing to listen. And currently, I'm on break during a 16-hour shift using a treadmill in the basement, and I'm trying to make the most of my time this year and trying to live up to my promises and live up to my goals in life. So thanks for watching. So very often the concept of being kind is confused with being weak, and it's far from that. Being kind, undoubtedly, and many would agree, is a very, very wonderful thing and a wonderful way to be. If someone takes advantage of someone being kind, I feel it says more about the weakness of the person who's taking advantage of the kind person than the kind person themselves. If someone's being kind to friends, family, and members of their community, it's more likely to gather and garnish respect from other people and support from other people. On the other hand, if one is more likely to be the one who is taking advantage of kind people, being manipulative, being sociopathic, etc., they're more likely to be shunned by their community and might have to go somewhere else and find new prey to take advantage of. And it can't be easy to have to sit there and keep doing that, moving from place to place to find new communities of people to extort and take advantage of. It can't be very sustainable, and it can't really be very good for that individual either. Now, I know this is a stretch, and we're dealing with something very abstract and generalized here, so thanks for coming with me on this whole idea. I know it's pretty out there. So kindness is not necessarily a weakness, it's a strength, and to take advantage of kind people, I feel, is more likely to be seen as a negative trait or even a weakness. Now, to talk about the concept of weakness as far as what goes, you can be physically weak, you can be mentally weak, you can be socially weak, you can be psychologically weak. And in all these different circumstances, just because you were at a disadvantage in any one of those particular traits does not necessarily mean that you're weak overall as a person. If anything, you might be forced to have to cultivate strengths in all the other areas to make up for it. I understand that it's very strange and even ironic to claim that weakness is not so much a weakness in itself as it could be a strength. But what I am saying, though, is often that people with a certain weakness can be viewed as weak overall, and as a result can be grossly misjudged and even underrated as far as their strengths in other areas. So far we have kindness and we have weakness as things that are not necessarily weak per se, but also are strengths in their own regard. But I'd also like to talk about the concept of faith too, because as someone who has identified as being mostly atheist for most of my life, and just the past maybe 5 or 6 years, been more on the agnostic side of the spectrum, I really feel like having faith is not necessarily a sign of weakness by any stretch, and I think it's very much a strength because there's been a number of studies that suggest that having faith in a God or a higher power, or even in your religion of choice, take any one you want, and that if you have faith in that religion, you're more likely to have a higher quality of life, living a longer life and a healthier life physically by having that faith. I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. When you just have faith in God above that everything is going to be okay, you can just relax about a lot of stuff and not have to worry about a bunch of existential questions that might keep you awake at night. Like me, I'm awake a lot because I'm thinking about stuff way too much. Thanks for tuning in. So on that note, I think that faith is also more of a sign of strength than a weakness. I also like to add being apologetic to the list. Just because someone has the capacity to recognize when they're at fault for something and when they messed up and they apologize for it is not a sign of weakness. I think it's very much a positive trait. On the other hand, though, if someone misuses apologies or overuses them or uses them when they're not really sorry, then I think that is definitely more of a negative trait or a weakness, because the more you misuse apologies and you use empty apologies, the more you dilute the power of your apology, not just for other people receiving them, but also for your ability to actually give a genuine apology. You just apologize for anything and everything that goes wrong, whether or not you actually feel sorry or you feel apologetic, your apologies won't have the strength that they need when you really need them the most. And more importantly, they won't have the strength when the person needs to hear a genuine apology. Another thing to consider is the concept of being modest. Sometimes people think that if you're modest or if you're humble, that it's a sign of weakness. And I don't think so. I think knowing one's limitations and being able to communicate that to other people or even demonstrate it through is quite a strength. Kind of like that whole concept of walk softly and carry a big stick, right? Knowing one's limitations, knowing one's weaknesses or inabilities to do certain things and sharing it with the world, I think that's a strength. Being vulnerable is a strength. Once again, I know some of these are oxymoronic or sound backwards, but really give it some thought. It makes sense if you think about it. Another thing to add to the list is empathy. The ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and try to see what they might be going through and how they might be feeling is not a sign of weakness. It's not a negative trait. It's very much a positive trait. And I know for some people, the idea of being empathetic or even putting themselves in someone else's shoes for just one moment is a sign of weakness for them. Maybe an example of this could be someone who is a shrewd businessman and they really want to achieve a certain goal in the business world. And they know by achieving that goal, they might be shafting over hundreds of other people in the process, maybe getting them to lose their job at a factory or something like that. But they don't care. They don't want to think about that. They just want to think about the billions and billions or millions or whatever amounts of money they might be getting for this deal, and they don't want to think about the negative consequences of all these other people, because if they do that, that'd be weak. That'd be a weakness of them. When in fact, I think that would be quite a strength to recognize that and find some other solution. I mean, how happy could you possibly be with all that money? It's got to be pretty lonely having a bunch of money and not many real close friends or people that you really care about or people that care about you. Now, I know I'm generalizing. This is some hypothetical situation of a businessman that I'm demonizing in my head and all that, but think about it for just a second. Empathy's a cool thing. It's not a weakness. I'm convinced of this. Hope I can convince someone out there that needs to hear this that it's a good idea also. Another thing we can add to this list is being gentle, showing your soft side, showing your heart, demonstrating that you have feelings too. You can be as tough as you want and be all macho and show all your strength all day long. But you have to ask yourself, how often has someone else being tough and macho around you really empowered you or made you feel better about yourself or had a significant change or an impact on you long term? The people who've shown me kindness and their soft side and have been able to talk to me and level with me as a human being one-on-one have had more of a significant impact on me in changing me to become a better person overall. So yeah, being gentle, definitely a strength, far from being a weakness in my humble opinion. Another thing we can add to the list is being generous. If you feel you have an abundance and you feel the need to share it with other people and that would be a good thing, that's not a weakness at all, nor should it be perceived as such. I think that being generous demonstrates your capacity for empathy and your ability to level with other people and see and recognize what their needs are, and to see and recognize when you have an abundance. Know that it's okay to separate yourself from the things you have an abundance of in order to help out other people who don't have it. By extending a helping hand and generosity to other people, it also shows them that they have it in themselves to pay it forward to other people who might need something they have an abundance of. Now, some people might call this concept socialism, and as we all know, socialism's horrible, right? I don't think so. I think it's an example of the free will at work, and the free market too. The free love market. Spread that stuff everywhere. I mean, come on, we'd all be better off if we had a little bit more love, a little more compassion, a little more understanding, a little more kindness in our lives. Straight up we would. And that brings up the next one. Let's throw compassion on this list also. That's definitely not a weakness. Now, I know a lot of these adjectives on this list are kind of like synonymous for each other or synonyms for each other, or can be used interchangeably quite a bit. But I think it's a good idea to use many of these words as possible that are often confused as weakness to a number of people and demonstrate that no, they are in fact really good, admirable traits and strengths. On that note, while we're talking about what all these words have in common and how they're all strengths, let's go ahead and throw a couple more in there. Let's throw in truthfulness or honesty, and let's also throw in being genuine and true to who you are. I think that's very important, to not be phony. They kind of go together, of course, but it all depends on your perspective and how you want to view a word, right? And that's what this whole thing is about. It's all about your perspective and how you want to view things. If you want to sit there and pick apart different characteristics and traits and label them as negative, you can do that all day long. You can find negative things to look at and complain about all day long if that's what you're looking for. And if you're looking for positive characteristics and traits, like I am right here obviously, you can find all those things. Now, I'm not suggesting you should just do that and just look at all the beauty in the world all the time, which is a great way to live. It really is, to see all the good and the positive things in the world, because there's a lot of negative things in the world too. You can't just set aside all the negativity and just put on your blinders and just focus on beauty all the time and all the positive traits. There's a lot of sick people, there's a lot of sad people, there's a lot of angry people, hurtful people, vindictive people out there in the world, and we can't just ignore that. We have to recognize that. We have to protect ourselves, we have to protect our loved ones, and ideally if we can help them out and show them a better way to live, then that's even better too. And I really think the only way to do that is by embracing all of these traits that are otherwise considered negative and recognize them as positive traits that have the capacity to make positive change in the world we live in. So that's a beautiful list and all that, but as I said, we can't just focus on the good stuff all the time. Let's go over characteristics and traits that are usually seen as strengths and how I feel they're actually quite negative in certain circumstances. One of them is being overly judgmental. Sometimes people feel that people who call a spade, or say it how it is, or speak what's on their mind is a symbol of strength, even if it's at the expense of hurting other people, or dehumanizing them, or insulting them in some way. I don't think that's cool, and I don't think that's necessarily a strength. If anything, it makes you look like a jerk. And you might get the respect of some people out there that see that as a strength, but overall I think it has long-term consequences on your being, and is definitely going to wear you down over time and make you more into a weak person and a sad person. Being hypocritical is something else I can add to this list. I don't think I have to make much of a case for this one because we can all agree, even the hypocrites out there can agree that being hypocritical is not cool. You see what I did there? Because hypocrites don't admit that they do the same thing that they... Never mind. But I think it's real important to point that out though, because all of us have the capacity to be hypocrites and not necessarily notice when we are, and even be in denial when we realize that we are being a hypocrite, or even justify being a hypocrite. Just as much as we all have the potential to be overly judgmental, or even be quick to prejudge other people, or stereotype other people, or even to generalize or just put people in some classification and label them with something. Just as I'm doing in this video here today. Another character trait that can be falsely seen as a strength is being forceful. Just because you are aggressive and you find ways to get your way no matter what, doesn't necessarily mean that you are being strong. I think it could possibly be more of a demonstration that you're good at getting your way at the expense of other people. And if you're following the script that we're all in this life together, it's probably in your best interest in order to focus on the well-being of people around you and lifting each other up rather than stepping on them to get to your goals. Because once again, people notice how you behave and people share information with each other. So it's one thing to be forceful with good intentions, but it's another thing altogether to be forceful in order to achieve one's own goals at the expense of other people. Another characteristic trait that is often confused with being strong and alpha and all that is being unapologetic. This is very unfortunate because I really feel it works often. If someone does not apologize for their actions or their behavior, it shows that they have no remorse. And it also shows that they really feel like they didn't do anything wrong in the first place, even when they may have done something wrong. I'm always weary of people who don't ever apologize for anything they've ever done wrong, because it kind of shows and demonstrates that they might lack empathy. And it's really frustrating and sad when you see people who are completely unapologetic advance through life and get rewarded for that kind of crappy behavior. We see it a lot with a number of different politicians. If a politician apologizes for something, they're suddenly admitting fault for something. And as we all know, politicians are not supposed to admit fault. No, they're supposed to take credit for everything good that happens and deny any responsibility if something bad happens. We can also add CEOs, lawyers, doctors, and a long list of other people who are in positions of power to this list. It's just very frustrating when people don't own up and take responsibility for their own actions. Another trait we can add to this list is being overconfident. I do feel that confidence follows competence. And I feel that often confidence and competence are confused with each other when they are in fact completely separate things. If you are competent in what you're doing and you do it well and you do it consistently well, then confidence will follow and confidence will support you with your decision making and your ability to do something with competence, the ability to do it well and accurately. However, we see people who are full of confidence and have absolutely no competence when it comes to doing certain tasks, but they feel confident enough that other people believe in them, and it's perceived as a strength. It's a weakness. Being overly confident is not a good thing, especially if you don't know what the heck you're doing. It's kind of like me on this channel, pretending like I know what I'm doing, making a YouTube channel and just making it up as I go, right? Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Another thing we can add to this list, ironically enough, is being cocky and arrogant, just like I was doing. Exactly what I just did with my past statement. Seriously though, being cocky and arrogant is often perceived as a strength and very often rewarded in the corporate world and the world of politics. And it's just sad to see it, it really is. I mean, being cocky and arrogant might win the respect of other cocky and arrogant people and other people who are hungry for power and want to achieve success in this world. It makes people turned off to spend time with those who are overly confident, cocky, arrogant, non-apologetic, forceful, etc., etc. You really want to have all the kind, truthful, compassionate, loving, empathetic people on your side. You really do. You know what I mean now, the ones who are really strong, the good, kind-hearted, generous, loving people. And by adopting these traits that give you temporary bouts of power, it will ultimately lead to your demise because you'll end up pushing away the folks that have the real strength. You'll turn them off from even wanting to associate with you because they'll see you as a threat to their own well-being and to their loved ones. Of course they're not going to want you around their friends if you're taking advantage of other people. But while we're here, let's go ahead and just add a couple more things to this list. How about adding not willing to compromise to the list? That's often seen as like a very bullheaded thing or a strength, right? Don't compromise with the enemy. No, we won't compromise. We get our way no matter what. I don't really think that's a sign of strength. I think that's more of a sign of arrogance and stubbornness, not willing to compromise with other people. You have to recognize that other people have needs too. And when it comes to business and politics, you have to recognize the need to be able to compromise with other people. Everyone needs to get something out of the exchange. It's a two-way street. You can't just go in there and get everything. It's give and take. It's sharing, making sure everyone's needs are met. That's strength. And that also leads me to adding being overly demanding to this list. Just expecting that everyone else does things for you and for your needs and not recognizing that other people have needs, I think is just another sign of weakness, even though, unfortunately, it can be seen as a strength by many people. So I generally don't like to end my videos on negative notes. I think I kind of ended it on a positive note, even though I ended with the negative stuff. But hey, if you're new to my channel, thanks for making it this far, and thanks for watching my video of me ranting here on this treadmill. You could have been doing something else with your life, but no, you chose to sit here and listen to this guy talk about stuff. And I appreciate it. I respect it even. Thank you. But I would like to tell you, in case you didn't know, that I do post every single day here on YouTube for the year of 2021. And once a week on Sunday nights or Monday mornings, I post another new circus and floor arts tutorial video. So if you want to learn how to juggle balls, or juggle clubs, or do contact juggling like David Bowie did in the Labyrinth, or those fushigi crazes that happened a couple years back. Or you can learn how to spin things on your finger. We call that pediddling in the circus and flow arts community. It's a funny word, but it's our word, that's what we use. Or you can even learn how to do the devil sticks. I've been doing those longer than any other circus and flow arts prop. And a number of other circus and flow arts tutorials I'll be releasing every single Sunday for this year. And keep in mind, these are all for the beginners. These are all beginner level tutorials that show you the ropes of teaching yourself how to do these arts. I'll give you enough material for you to get started and having fun with learning how to play with this stuff. And the rest is entirely up to you. You gotta practice to get better, and there's only one way to learn, is by doing it. Anyways, folks, thanks very much for watching once again. I really talked your ear off long enough, so I'll leave you with this. Please remember to never give up. Do your best, stay true to you, and be amazing. Thanks for watching. Good night.